Welcome to a new video! Today I'm going to share with you my Prank Kids deck profile. Now this is obviously the TCG version of Prank Kids after being hit by the ban list. Because, well, in the last ban list we lost Meow Meow, which means we need to go back to the roots how the deck was played before, which we'll get to that when we get to the deck list. But if you are a player in Master Duel only, or you just want to see the Master Duel version that I have, I'm not sure if it's 100% up to date, but I will leave it in the description down below, like the link to that video, as well in the top comment, so you'll be able to check it out if you're interested in that, because this is going to be for the TCG specifically. But before we jump right into the video itself, I'm going to remind you that if you want to see more videos like this, please consider hitting the subscribe button. It helps a ton. And without further ado, let's jump right into the list itself. Alright, so jumping into the deck list itself, we're going to start things off with our Prank Kids engine, and hopefully I'm pronouncing their names correctly because I do have German cards of Prank Kids, so I believe these are German though. So the first one is 3 copies of, I believe this is Fancies, 3 copies of Dropsies, which is pretty easy. I believe this one is Lamsies, and then of course the 2 copies of the English version of Roxy's. This is the Prank Kids lineup that I like to run, especially right now. Now let me explain why I run this one specifically before we get to the effects if you don't know them. The reason why I ran Roxy's to 2 is because unlike, when we got Meow Mew or Meow Meow, this card is pretty much the worst card in the entire Prank Kids lineup because it's not useful for the fusion summon of Puddle Butler. It's not a bad card by any means, but because we don't really have, an easy way to just use this immediately, it becomes a little bit worse, and we also need to run another engine and, a lot more fusion focus to start our engine going sometimes, so Roxy's is definitely worse, but there are still ways to get us to our hand if we need it. It's also its banishing effect becomes a little bit more difficult to use because we do need specific cards in our hand. Like I said, because we do need to run engine requirements because of Meow Mew now banned, or Meow Meow, whatever you like to call him. But you do run overall 16 copies of a Prank Kids card, or should I say monster, so seeing 2 of these in your opening hand with a fusion spell is very possible to do, so it's not really the end of the world. But for their own individual effects, all of them when they're fusion summoned or link summoned, for the link summon or fusion summon of course of a Prank Kid monster, they have a particular effect that they do their requirement and then they summon another one from deck that is not their original name in defense position. Roxy's, you banish a card and draw a card and then you summon one of these 3. Lamsies, you burn your opponent for 500 and then you summon another one from the others that are not him. Dropsies, you gain 1,000 life points and then you basically summon another one that is not him. And then you have Fancies, which in my opinion is the best one because it's a foolish burial for any Prank Kids card, which could be the monsters, spells, or traps, which we'll get to those when we'll get to those. And also summon a one that is not him from your deck. So all of them basically do that, and if you open up with a fusion spell on 2 of these, you can fusion summon into your fusion monster and then summon the other 2 from your deck to then basically link summon with them to the link 2 and then summon another 2 from your deck. So that's kind of like how the deck works. But because we don't have Meow Meow, which I'm going to keep stressing that, the deck is a lot worse because we need ways to start the engine going. But they're still really good cards and you want to run at least this lineup in my opinion. You can run the 3rd Roxy's, but I think it's just absolutely unnecessary. And speaking for an engine that help you start things going, we do need a good normal summon, and that's why I run 3 copies of Alistair the Invoker. This is a card that I know some people love and some people hate, but in this particular deck, I think it's absolutely mandatory to run this card right now, again, because we do need a good normal summon. We do need a way to get a fusion spell to get the engine going, and we need a good normal summon, and this serves both. It can give you the ability to get a fusion spell and maybe just go into the Mechaba and just sit on it, and then next turn basically OTK your opponent or something of that nature if you don't really have the correct amount of cards or the cards that you need, or basically just get you a fusion spell. And that is also just good by itself because it just do things, which is really powerful. So this card is definitely a card that you want to maximize on now that we have Meow Meow banned. But that does it for the 14 monsters that we actually use for, starting our plays and play the deck. But the additional card monsters that we'll run are Hand Traps, which are 3 Ash, and Double Nibiru. Double Nibiru serves a dual purpose of being light and being a card that a lot of people don't respect and don't expect, so that's why I'm running 2 copies of it. And then Ash Blossom, being a fire, is actually pretty good for Purgatory or any extra deck, and also it's basically the best hand trap in the format, so that's why I run 3 copies of Ash Blossom in order to see it in our hand. But that does it for the monster lineup. Pretty small, pretty sweet, and not really need any explanation that much. Now we'll move on into the spells, and we start with the biggest engine of the deck where it comes to the spells, which is the field spell stuff, which is 3 Pranket's Place, 3 Meltdown, 1 Set Rotation, and 1 Terraforming to round off our fusions, or should I say fusion spells, or should I say field spells, searchers / field spells in general. Now, both of these field spells are unfortunately a hard once per turn effects. However, due to the effect of Roxy's, which is pretty nice, if you're able to activate it, you can banish the additional copies that you don't need, and then basically draw a different card, so that's pretty okay. But one thing I would say, you do want both of these at 3 because they're consistency cards, getting both of your engines going, and they're also very, very important in general. In the case of this card, this is helping you for OTKing your opponent and just like dealing with some particular, monsters with high attack, reducing when you link summon all opponent monsters attack by 1,000, and if you fusion summon, I believe you increase your monster's attack by 500 as well. Actually, it's reducing and increasing by 500. So when you link summon, you reduce their monsters by 500, and then when you fusion summon, you increase your monsters by 500, which is really, really nice. In the case of Meltdown, is basically getting your Alistair engine rolling and also giving you protection for your fusion spells. Terraforming is an additional field spell for each and one of these, so basically you run 4. And the reason why you also run Set Rotation is that if you do open up with one of the field spells and you open up with Set Rotation, you can just Set Rotation, get the field spell that you don't need to your opponent, and the one that you do need to you, activate that one, and then on top of that, just basically activate the one that you have in your hand, or vice versa, depending on what you want to, and you zen up your deck and get the engines that you need rolling, which is, like I said, pretty good. But that does it for the field spell engine. Now to the fusion spells, we have 7 of those, which is 2 Pandemonium, 2 Meltdown, 2 normal Polymerization, and of course, the God card fusion spell, Instant Fusion. This card is absolutely ridiculous with Rocket Ride, specifically going first, second, or whatever, and you have enough monsters in grave. This card becomes just absolutely ridiculous. 1 card, summon 2 monsters, it's just absolutely amazing, so this card is very, very good. Polymerization is a card that helps you to get your fusion engine going. That also can use monsters on the field, but doesn't lock you like Pandemonium, because when you use Pandemonium, you're locked for Prankets for the rest of the turn, even though it's a normal fusion spell. And then Invocation can only fusion summon any monster from the hand. However, if you use Alistair the Invoker, or should I say, summon an invoked fusion monster, you can also use monsters from the field and graveyards. So, that's pretty important. Also, you know how this card goes, that you basically add the Alistair back to your hand and shuffle this back into the deck if you have a balanced Alistair, so that also works for this card really, really well. And it's a fusion engine that doesn't really die, so that's actually kind of cool. And that does it for those, and then for the rest of the spells, we have 1 copy of Pranket's Pranks, 1 copy of Cobra Grave, and then 3 copies of, as you can see, Dark Ruler No More. This card is necessary in the deck because you do want to break boards going second, so Dark Ruler No More is actually really, really good this format. We have a lot of monster effect-like decks, so just breaking them is pretty good. Cold Blooded Grave is to help you deal with hand traps yourself if you're not into it. And Pranks is a mixed thing card, is a card that you basically send with fancies most of the time to the graveyard to then retrieve it, because during the end phase you shuffle 3 Pranket's cards with different names into your deck, and then you draw a card. And it's also have its own effect, which is discard a Pranket card and then you summon a Pranket token, so it does help you sometimes start your plays, so I do like to run this card. It's not the best card, but it's definitely a card that's worth to run as a one-off. And that does it for the spell lineup. And then for the trap, we only have 1, which is the 1 copy of Pranket's Plan. I have mixed feelings about this trap. In one hand, it's actually pretty nice in some particular situations, but on the other hand, I don't really like it that much. I do consider to cut it down completely and run an additional hand trap just because, but it does have its uses in the graveyard that if you need to, you can banish it and then just like save yourself from damage by shuffling a bunch of Prank Kids cards into your deck, and also just start your engine again because sometimes you run out of cards, so there is an advantage for that if you don't have plan. I should say not planned pranks. And then the other effect, which is the actual effect, is that you can, during the main phase, to activate this effect and immediately after the effect resolves, link summon a Prank Kid monsters using monsters you control. Now, I'm not really sure that effect does matter, but I also think that this card is just run because you do need another card you want to send to grave beside pranks. But honestly, I'm not really sure I want to keep this card. I will see about this in the future. I'm probably going to cut this and run like a third Nibiru or another hand trap. But for now, I'm running this card at 1. But that does it for the main deck lineup of the Prank Kids monsters, spells, and traps. We'll run 40 cards. Now we'll move on into the extra deck. And for the extra deck, we're going to start, of course, with the fusions. We'll start with the Prank Kids fusions, which is 1 copy of Washer, double copies of Rocket Ride, and then of course the 1 copy of Bottle Butler. Bottle Butler is absolutely ridiculously good card. Unfortunately, because we lost Meow Mew, it's a lot worse because we're not able to wipe twice. But still, Raigeki the entire board to your opponent is still very, very powerful, so you do want to summon this one. And you do need the 3 main Prank Kids monsters that are Fancies, Roxys, and Lamsies to summon this guy, so it's pretty important to know that as well. You cannot use Roxys for this one. Rocket Ride is now became the best Prank Kid monster again to start your engine if you have a fusion spell, because you go into this card using 2 Prank Kid monsters from your hand, summon the other 2 from your deck, leave this on the field, then you just summon 2, and you also can go into the Link monster, and then you can just use this card to bring back 2 monsters from your graveyard by tributing itself. There cannot attack for the turn, but who cares? Also, this card can attack directly by losing 1,000 attack, but again, who cares? Mostly use the 1,000 attack thing just because you want to chain block from your opponent from hitting your Prank Kids cards, so that's actually pretty good. As for Washer, Washer is basically have the same effect as this, but during the opponent's turn. So it summon 2 Prank Kids monsters during the opponent's turn. And its other effect, which is actually really good, is that when your Prank Kids monsters attack, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response, which is very, very good as well. So it does help you sometimes close up games. And then for the rest of the fusion monsters, I run 3 invoked fusion monsters, which are 1 copy of Raijin, 1 copy of Pegatrio, and 1 copy of Mechaba. These are the fusion monsters that I run for my choice. Mechaba is 100% mandatory due to the fact that, you know, it's an invoked engine, so you want to run this card at 1. Pegatrio is because we do have a lot of fire, and the opponent can also have an Ash Blossom, so you can just like drop this and basically punish them if they have a big board and just like seal games that way. So, you know, this card is really, really nice actually to seal games, like I said. And then Raijin is here, and these 2, one of these can be cut down if you want to run a second Mechaba, but the reason why I run Raijin specifically is because of Falanderies. This card can answer Falanderies really, really well, because one of your biggest problems is that if your opponent lock you into a specific attribute, like, you know, Falanderies does. So in order to battle that, we do have Raijin, which can take, not only can take a card from your opponent graveyard if they need it and then banish it, although that can actually help them, so maybe you don't want to do that. It's really, really dependent on what you're dealing with. But the point is that it immediately can be a Book of Moon to your opponent barrier statue, and just basically saying to your opponent, no, you're not going to bury your statue me, and I'm going to continue my play without any problem. Now, of course, you might need to deal still with the Mega Ryza, but you still have the ability to deal with that, so that is pretty good. And then for the only Xyz monster, totally awesome. I don't really need to explain this one. You have 2 Dropsies, you can summon this, and then when it dies, it can give you one of your Dropsies back to your hand. Very, very good. Then for the links, we have 1 copy of Artemis, 2, or should I say 1 copy of Bao Bao Bark, and then the 2 copies of Doodle, which got stuck in my other cards for a second. But Doodle is the main card that you want to try to summon when it comes to link play, so when it comes to Prank Kids engine. it's on summon, search for you any Prank Kids spell and trap, or should I say link summon, and then in its own effect for tributing, just like the fusion monsters, instead of special summoning the monsters, it's basically giving you the ability to target 2 Prank Kids cards with different names in your graveyard except itself and add them to your hand, which is very good with your fusion spells and Prank Kids pranks and other cards that you want to, and also summoning the Bao Butler during the opponent's turn. In the case of Bao Bark, it's basically the same thing but during the opponent's turn, and its other effect is that in the, if you have a monster it's points to, it's basically increase its attack by 1,000. I believe it's only Prank Kids monsters, but it's still very, very good to help you seal up games, so that's kind of cool. And then Artemis is just here for the invoked requirements to have something to link it off into and still have a light, which is pretty nice. Then for the other links, 1 Unicorn, 1 Boral Sword, and 1 Rooster. Boral Sword is because I don't have access code. If you have access code, definitely recommend to run that as well, or I should say instead. Unicorn is just a spin card and discard a card for it, so that's kind of fine. And then Rooster is basically the same thing as Battle Butler, but a Harpy Feather Duster for the most part. So yeah, this is basically your Harpy Feather Duster. Battle Butler is your Raigeki on a stick. Again, if we had Meow Meow 2, it would have been better, but still pretty good. But that's pretty much does it for the deck profile as a whole. Hope you enjoyed that one. Honestly, if you want to see like a good Prank Kids list for Master Duel, I did upload that one pretty lately, so I do recommend to check that out. I will leave a link in the description or in the top comment if you want to go to see the Prank Kids version of Master Duel, because Prank Kids still have Meow Meow 3, so I do recommend for you to go check that out. But this is the version for the TCG, so hope you enjoyed that one. Now let's move on into the next deck choices. Alright, so for the next deck choices, I'm going to put the same 4 options from last video. Again, they're going to be the same 4. I'm not even going to say them again because they're just going to be the same. So if you're interested to see if any of these decks down below, let me know in the comments down below which one you want to see first. And, just let me know. I might decide to do one of these first, might decide to do something else, I don't know. But for this week specifically, I want to do Prank Kids because, banlist basically hit them and I thought it will be kind of fun. So that's why I skipped on these specifically this week. But again, you can choose whatever one of these you want to in the comments down below. But yeah, that's pretty much does it for the video as a whole and does it for the deck profile. Hope you enjoyed, hope you learned something if you're a TCG player and you're interested to play Prank Kids still, but don't, were not really sure what to do after the ban list. Hope that gave you direction. Remember, creativity is the key in this game. Have a good day, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.